What's up, guys? Welcome to True Crime Queen. My name is Ginger. Listener discretion is advised. The dark nature of the show is not suitable for young ears or those sensitive to graphic material. But without further ado, let's go. Alright, welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone out there is doing good, following social distancing precautions. I want to thank any grocery store employees, any truck drivers, or obviously anyone in the medical field that's listening out there. I want to thank you so much for all your hard work. You are the real ass MVPs. Thank you for keeping shit together when times get tough. I got a special case for us this week, sort of like the finale for season 1. So this is a big one. It's been almost 10 years now since anyone has seen the little 7-year-old Portland, Oregon boy who went missing from his elementary school after his stepmom dropped him off on June 4th, 2010. And not one person we know of has seen this little boy, who would actually be 16 years old by now. That, of course, is if he is still alive. This case is quite the mind bender, so make sure you get comfy, grab something to drink, because you're in for a two-parter this time with the disappearance case of Kyron Horman. So Kyron was born in September of 2002 in Portland, Oregon, to his mom Desiree and father Kane. Desiree and Kane had actually decided on a divorce just a month before the birth of Kyron. Their divorce document cited irreconcilable differences, and I believe it was not a super nasty issue. Desiree made claims before that they were basically living their separate lives within the same household at the time, at this point in their relationship. They continued to share custody of Kyron until he was about 2 years old, when his mother Desiree gave full custody to the father Kane because she became overwhelmed with a bunch of medical issues, and more specifically kidney failure. Some sources indicate that this was due to Desiree taking a non-FDA approved medication, and other rumors were alluding to Desiree needing to seek rehabitual treatment for drug use perhaps. Neither one of those comments was easy to verify, though, because of how many times the story has been retold. It's almost like a game of telephone with some of these details. But either way, I don't think either one of those is relatable to why or how Kyron disappeared. Just more context to the background story. Despite her health issues, she was said to still be very actively in Kyron's life, and both parents had ended up remarrying other people. Kyron's stepmother's name is Terri, and she's been in the picture for Kyron's entire life. They actually began dating during the divorce with Kyron's mom, Desiree. Now, whether Terri is the real reason for the divorce is, a point, but it's almost irrelevant too, because Desiree has also gone off and gotten remarried to a man named Tony. And I've read that she married a detective, and he actually inspired Kyron to grow up and be a police detective as well. I understand this is a pretty normal family entity, and though there was a bit of the usual family drama that comes with a divorce situation, I believe Kyron in general came from a very good family environment. I read that they would sometimes have issues with Kyron not wanting to go over to his mom's, or sometimes it was back over to his dad's, but honestly, that was the case for me too. My parents were divorced, and I would just get comfy wherever I was at, and I wouldn't want to go back wherever I came from. There was never any abuse. It just was my 7-year-old ass being 7 in a, frustrating family situation. I personally don't read into the claims of Kyron doing this as like a red flag. Some people do, and that's fine. Honestly, whatever helps us find Kyron is really the most important thing to me in the end. During the time Kyron went missing, he was living with his dad and his stepmom outside of Portland, Oregon, while his mom and stepfather lived a few hours away in Medford, Oregon. That also would especially make going to the other parent's home even more of an annoyance to me at age 7, having to drive hours to get there or back. Anyways, Kyron's father, Kane, apparently works at Intel. It's a computer processor company, while the stepmom, Terri, was said to have been a school teacher, but was really involved in Kyron's education and school activities. There's plenty of archived images of Terri cheering Kyron on at soccer games, as well as many photos of her involvement in Kyron's classroom. Kane and Terri had their own child together, actually, a half-sister to Kyron named Kiara, and she was born in 2008, so she wasn't even quite a toddler yet when Kyron vanished. You can also see her in some of the photos, which means she was lugging around a baby on top of being a seemingly involved parent. So basically, Kyron lives with his dad and stepmom, baby sister, and also has a stepbrother who is Terri's older child from a previous marriage. He was said to not be living in the home at the time of Kyron's disappearance, but does occasionally come visit and stay for a week or so every so often. Kyron was a second grader at Skyline Elementary School in Northwest Portland, Oregon. It's a pretty small school for grades kindergarten through 8th grade. Some of the younger classes are bunched together like kindergarten and 1st grade, 2nd grade and 3rd grade. It's a public school in a smaller community just outside the busier part of Portland that most people would imagine I'm talking about. It's located near a rather large wooded area known as Forest Park. The area is heavily wooded, fairly rural, with like long winding roads and lots of greenery along the way. If you've never been through the forests of Oregon, you're like absolutely living your life wrong, because it's super beautiful, to be honest. Oregon's like one of my favorite places in the entire world because of it. Anyway, so on Friday, June 4th of 2010, there was a science fair being held in the early morning hours at Skyline Elementary. I believe this was an annual event for the kiddos, one of the end of the year type activities. It was the second to the last week of school. The second half of the day with the science fair was also said to include a talent show portion, and overall it was a more fun day for the students than a standard curriculum day. Kyron did his own little project for the science fair as well. His stepmother, Terri, posted pictures of it on her Facebook showing how hard he worked on it. It was said to be one of his favorite animals, the red tree frog. The science fair was to be held from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. specifically, so the parents and the families of the students were invited to tour the school and also see all the other students' projects. There was no check-in system or any type of sign-in, sign-out type of thing, and parents could basically come and go as they pleased from the property at this time. Students who weren't brought by their parents were bused to school, and they were going to be arriving just before 9 a.m. when school technically started. And the instructions for those students were to head to their first room class at 9, and then all the students would be redistributed into smaller classes of children for parent chaperones to take them through the school to see all the other exhibits. There were a few arguments later on down the road when the stepmom Terri would have to explain where she last physically saw Kyron in the building before he went missing, and this is going to be within the school. There was apparently a misunderstanding between Terri and Kane at some point because she describes last seeing Kyron heading towards his classroom, and he disputed Terri couldn't have seen Kyron where she described she was standing because his classroom wasn't on that particular side of the hall. This has since been clarified, but both Mom Desiree and Kane were actually incorrect on which classroom Kyron was actually enrolled in, and Terri was able to verify her claims after the misunderstanding was addressed. They thought that he was in class 209, which was last year's class, and Terri knew that he was in class 213, which were both located on the second floor, but about 3 rooms away from each other. So that was the first little hiccup in describing what happened to Kyron. So on the day of the disappearance, Kane promised his son Kyron some ice cream after school for how hard he had worked on his science project. Kyron was normally said to ride the bus both to and from school. However, this day, his stepmom Terri would drive him to school because he was going to bring his rather large project. It was one of those big trifold poster board projects, so it was probably safer to transport it in their personal vehicle rather than risk taking it on the school bus. So she loads up 18-month-old Kiara and 7-year-old Kyron into Kane's white truck and heads off to school, and Kane said the last time he saw Kyron, he was super excited about showing his project to his teacher. Kyron, Terri, and Kiara all show up at Skyline Elementary a little after 8 a.m., and Terri says that they first headed up the stairs to put away Kyron's backpack and his coat in his homeroom class. He then sat up his presentation at his desk, where Terri then took the famous last picture of Kyron next to his project. She also took a few other shots, one with his deskmate and a couple of Kiara. She said they walked around the school for a little bit, and then when the bell rang at 8:45, her and Kyron took separate staircases to the second floor, and they sort of like raced up the stairs to see who would get to the second floor first. And Terri said that her and Kiara took one end of the staircases, while Kyron took the middle staircase. And you have to imagine that there's 3 in the school, and it's like a long hall, and each side has a staircase, and there's one in the middle. And she took one on the end, and he took one on the middle. And when they both got up there, they saw each other, they waved, and Kyron turned around to head to his class with his friends. Terri then leaves the school with Kiara and runs some of her daily errands before heading back home and waiting for Kyron to get out of school. Around 3:30, Terri, Kane, and Kiara walk down to Kyron's bus stop to pick up Kyron as he gets off the bus, as they always do. And that's when the bus driver informs both Kane and Terri that Kyron didn't get on the bus after school. So the bus driver was able to radio into the school that Kyron Horman's parents were on their way to get Kyron, who must have thought that his parents were going to pick him up because they took him to school. And initially, that's why Kane and Terri weren't super worried. They thought there was just a misunderstanding with Kyron, and he was most likely waiting for them at the school at that very moment. So they arrive at Skyline Elementary School around 3:45, and that's just as the school is about to notify the police because they have come to learn that Kyron was marked absent, and now there's something obviously very wrong since his parents are here looking for him. Kane and Terri become aware that Kyron was marked absent because he wasn't in his first room class apparently for attendance when the science fair had closed at 10 a.m. The actual time that attendance was taken has never been released, probably due to safety reasons. However, it was a huge problem when trying to figure out the amount of time that Kyron could have been missing initially. The police obviously know when attendance was taken that day, but that information was not released to us crime junkies anyway. The police were notified at 3:46 by the school secretary and followed up with a call to Desiree, Kyron's biological mom, to inform her of the situation. And Desiree says that she was so blindsided by the information she was getting that she hung up on the school as soon as the school secretary confirmed that both Kane and Terri were at the school, so she immediately calls Terri, who actually interrupts the cops that are questioning her by swiftly answering Desiree's call, and she starts explaining to her that they can't find Kyron, and they don't know exactly how long he's been missing. Both the Portland Police Department as well as the Multnomah County Sheriff's Department have dispatched officers to the school, and they arrived around 4:30. And after quickly double-checking that he wasn't still somewhere in the school, a widespread broadcast was submitted around 5:30 that evening, notifying all the parents in the school district that the second grader, Kyron Horman, did not arrive home after school. The FBI was notified later that night and were said to have arrived the very next morning to help the local authorities in the process of organizing a very large search operation. So for 10 straight days, 1,300 people vigorously searched the 2 miles surrounding the area of the school. Already $25,000 was being offered as a reward for any tips leading to the recovery of Kyron Horman. Sauvie Island, an area located about 6 miles from the school, was also searched in the days after Kyron disappeared. After the island was searched, the area below the bridge connecting the island to the area was also thoroughly searched, though nothing has been discovered. It appears that Terri Horman's cell phone pinged off a tower, possibly indicating that she was in the area that she had not mentioned to police. This cell phone ping would also later be disputed, but at the time of the investigation, it had actually ended up steering it back into the direction of Terry's possible involvement in Kyron being missing. In addition to the disputes about where Terri last saw Kyron in the school, and by the 10th day of the search, it had become the largest missing persons operation held in Oregon State. At the time of the search, Terri Horman's Facebook account was not set to private, and because she was technically the last one to see Kyron, and there were some slight inconsistencies on her behalf already circulating in the media, people started looking at her like real hard. Her first few public posts after Kyron's disappearance were rather expected. She had requested that her friends didn't listen to the news because they were saying things that were incorrect, but that she was also in the process of getting flyers and t-shirts made for the search efforts, which were being maneuvered. And no one seemed to fret too much about those, but Terri unfortunately decided it was a good idea to post on that damn Book of Faces that she was going to the gym just 4 days after the search had begun. And the context of the post was something like, "Damn, I put in a whole 8 hours at the gym today." And like, you guys, this shit set people off. People watching her every move were quick to ask themselves and everyone else what in the actual fuck would make a mom of a missing child practically brag post about spending so much time in the gym during what you'd think would be like a very stressful time in her life. And she immediately made her profile private after receiving some of the negative backlash from her seemingly inappropriate post, and actually ended up facing Dr. Phil over it a little ways down the road. No one from Kyron's family had agreed to make a public appearance or statement with the media until 5 days into the search. And when they did, Kyron's stepfather first read a letter they wrote directed straight to Kyron, and they were asking him to come home and telling him how much they loved him. And then next, Kyron's biological father, Kane, then came on and read a statement from him and Terri about their appreciation for all the help that they were receiving thus far and encouraging everyone to come forward if they know anything. At this point, the four of Kyron's parents appeared to be in complete solidarity and full support of each other. Each of the couples were embracing their partner. It seems very evident at this point that there's no obvious suspicion between any of the parents and that they're pretty much all stuck in this scary situation together for the time being. But by day 11 of Kyron's disappearance, the authorities had made a public statement that they were no longer considering this to be a missing persons case, that they're officially changing it to a criminal investigation instead. And obviously that means that they have some reason to believe that Kyron is missing due to criminal action on someone's part. The extensiveness of the searches performed led them to believe that Kyron is a victim of some sort of criminal activity, and they haven't found enough evidence to believe he's just temporarily missing. And who do police like to focus on when it's a criminal investigation? The family, and more specifically, the last known person to see the missing child alive, which would be Terri Horman. So Terri Horman was asked to elaborate on her timeline of the entire day, and this is how it goes. Terri and the kiddos arrived at the school around 8 a.m. when the school had opened for the science fair. They all walked into the school and reportedly dropped off Kyron's backpack and coat into his homeroom cubby. Terri and Kiara walked Kyron to where he presented his poster on frogs, and Terri made sure to take the picture of Kyron and his work. Terri then talked to his teacher about looking at other exhibits and dropped off some paperwork that Kyron's doctor needed filled out for permission to observe him in class. She had gotten it just the day before this, on June 3rd, when she took her baby to the doctor for an earache. And she mentioned that Kyron was acting a bit off lately. And so the doctor wanted to see what she meant and gave her the proper paperwork needed for the school so that the doctor could come in and observe him during his school day. So this paperwork was exchanged between Terri and the school teacher this morning. Terri says they then walked around the school a little bit and looked at a few of the other students' projects. They dropped off a couple books at the library. They stopped in and visited with Kyron's former first grade teacher, Mr. Macbeth, and when the 8:45 bell rang, that signals students to start heading to their homerooms. So Terri and Kyron decided to race up the separate stairways to where she waved him off and then headed from Kyron's school over to a local Fred Meyer to grab some medicine for Kiara's earache. She claims they were actually out of what she said she needed for the meds, so that she then traveled to a different Fred Meyer store to find them. But Terri does happen to have the receipt from the first store she went to, placing her there at 9:12 a.m. She's on surveillance footage at the second store, on top of being seen by an acquaintance of hers who works at the gym that Terri frequents. I believe she was able to get this medicine she needed for the baby from the second location, and that would have put her there between 9:30 and 10 a.m. Terri then stopped in the dry cleaners to drop off some of Kane's clothes, as that business is actually in the same parking lot as the grocery store she was just in. The dry cleaners confirmed Terri had arrived just before 10 a.m. and only stayed the few minutes it took to come in and drop off her clothes. The owner mentions that she did not see the baby with her when she came into the business, which leads me to believe that because she knew she would be in and out so fast, she probably left Kiara in the truck. The business owner did say that she parked right in front of the store in her white truck, so that makes me also believe that she probably just left the baby in the car seat rather than getting her out, airing in the clothes and the baby. And obviously that's not safe, and I don't recommend ever leaving your kid alone in the car. But obviously we're talking about a woman that might possibly be involved in her own stepson's disappearance, so why bother reasoning that she wouldn't leave this baby in the car either way? Terri told police that she and Kiara then stopped into a Michael's craft store after they left the dry cleaners, and she arrived around 10:10 a.m. And I cannot for the life of me find the time that she left this Michael's craft store, which is actually total bullshit, to be honest. The police have released the time that she entered to the store, which is 10:10, but I have yet to find the time that she left the store. And it's obvious she left the Michael's store at some point, and I don't understand why it's such a secret. Unfortunately for Terri, it leaves the public with an hour-and-a-half gap in her timeline to theorize all the different ways she might be involved. If the time she left Michael's wasn't considered so highly confidential, we would be able to know how much time she might have had to do anything. So now there's about an hour-and-a-half time here that Terri's whereabouts can't be confirmed, and that's purely because the police refused to release the time in which she left the Michaels store. But to be honest, they don't fucking have to. So we're just going to have to deal with that. We are apparently worthy enough to know that Terri then checked into her gym at 11:39 a.m. with Kiara and put her into the daycare facility on site there, and said she stays for about an hour. She was said to have chatted in the lobby with a few of the other gym goers before she left, which means she probably didn't work out the entire hour she was there. Police say she was there from 11:39 to 12:20, which I'm not sure if that includes the time that she spent talking to the other women or not. But the gap here would be from the 10:10 time that she walked into the Michaels store. We don't know when she left. Then apparently she shows up at 11:39 at her 24-hour fitness and then leaves there at 12:20. So the gap they're indicating is going to be from 10:10 to 11:39. To me, it's only because they won't tell us when she left the Michaels store. Terri says after she left the gym, she then returned home with the baby. No one would be able to confirm the exact time she gets home, but approximations of the drive time from the 24-hour fitness to her home would be about 15 to 20 minutes. So I would say she got home a little after 1 p.m. Online activity shows the posts to Facebook that she made around 1:21 p.m., where she shares the few photos of the children, including the picture of Kyron smiling proudly with his frog presentation, to her page. Kane says he took a half-work day and came home around 2 p.m. He says Terri was home, things were normal, she was on the computer, and then he took a shower and had something to eat before all three of them walked up to Kyron's bus stop to meet him, where he was supposed to be getting dropped off at 3:30. That's Terri's day, resulting in about an hour and a half that she can't be confirmed, simply because the police are being so chintzy with their information about the Michaels store exit time. Terri claims that between the time that she left Michaels and arriving at the gym, she was just driving on the back roads trying to chill Kiara out while her medicine was kicking in. This led people to believe that she was driving Kiara around for the entire hour and a half that she was allegedly unaccounted for. However, her text messages show she claims she was only driving around for a few minutes. We will never know for sure because police won't stop the rumors by releasing that actual time that Terri was seen leaving Michaels. On a side note, have you guys ever been to Michaels? Because I spend at least an hour in that bitch anytime I'm there. And that goes really for any craft store on earth that I ever go into. It's kind of odd to me that so many people think she wouldn't have spent at least an hour there. Like, what stay-at-home mom/substitute teacher only goes into a Michaels store for like 5 minutes? Not a one. And I'm willing to bet a lot of money on that, you guys. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. But it turns out there's a few witnesses that claim that they did see both Kyron and Terri that morning in the school. Some of them have been subpoenaed to the grand jury in regards to the criminal investigation, and those statements obviously haven't been released either, but we can speculate based on what Terri says in her timeline a little bit. Some of those people would be staff members from the school, because Terri explains that she spoke with Kyron's homeroom teacher about the doctor's paperwork. A different staff member reportedly told Kane and Terri that they saw Kyron in the morning in a group with a male chaperone, yet this is never, ever, ever addressed ever again. A few of the other witnesses would be students, and that would be the student that was next to Kyron in the morning when they were taking pictures. In addition to that, a 7th grader at the school apparently said he saw Kyron in the morning in the gymnasium laughing with his friends and not with his mom. The time he saw him has never been released. The 4th witness I can think of is Terri actually ran into that woman that works at the gym when she was at the Fred Meyer, the second Fred Meyers. They had that quick chat where Terri even actually pulled out her phone and showed this woman named Andrea Kyron's project picture from school that she took that day. And Andrea makes it a point to say that this conversation that they stopped and had when they just happened to see each other at the store was actually the longest one that they probably have ever had. And in hindsight, she thought it was kind of odd that Terri went through all the effort of showing Andrea the picture of Kyron while they're just standing there in the middle of the grocery store and this bitch has like a sick kid on her hip. She's either securing an alibi or possibly just one of those moms that really does think everyone and anyone wants to see their kid. If you looked at the archived photos of Terri's Facebook page from when it wasn't private and the internet got a hold of it, you can see that she clearly is one of those moms though. Fifth witness I'm going to point out is that after Kyron went missing, a man named Jim Kelly, who lives near the school, told authorities that he witnessed a white truck come down his long, rarely used road around 1 p.m. that day, and then slowly turned back around to leave, but then returned again around 2 a.m. that night on the night of the disappearance, which he found super odd because only his neighbors use that road usually. And the sixth witness that I can think of, and this is the kicker, you guys. This man claims he was hired in spring of 2010 by Terri Horman to help her older son out on their 4-acre property with some of his yard work chores. He worked for her a few times in their home and was also aware that his employment was a secret from Terri's husband, Kane. So he tells police that 5 months before Kyron goes missing, Terri and him had met in a local restaurant and Terri was inquiring about someone who could take care, finger quotes, of her abusive husband, Kane, and she suggested it would be easy to make it look like a mugging gone wrong. He says that she told him that Kane always walks around with his laptop and $10,000 in cash, and whoever could help her take care of him could make off with the money easy peasy lemon squeezy. He apparently refused the offer himself, but he also did not go to the police until he saw that Kyron was missing from the media and at the same time the search is going on, the parents are conducting their polygraph tests, and Terri apparently took her polygraph test first 3 days into the search, and she was said to have failed this test, and she was very upset about it. The person conducting the test said that they found deception indicated on one of their key questions. The day after, Desiree and Kane took their polygraph tests on the 4th day and were reportedly said to have passed. 2 days after that, Terri then took her second test and reported that she was having trouble hearing the questions because she said to be deaf in her left ear and claimed that they wouldn't let her read the questionnaires' lips and she must be facing away from him at all times. And they said she was moved closer to help her out with the hearing problem, but she still reportedly failed the test. Terri admits that she actually walked out on her third polygraph test because she felt like she was being rushed and that she was probably going to fail it no matter what. Interestingly, the police decided that they were going to try to confirm Terri's old landscaper's claims about the alleged murder for hire plot that she had inquired about. So while Kane is at the police department getting informed about Rudolfo's claims, at the same exact time, they send Rudolfo and an undercover cop over to the Horman house where Terri is, hoping to catch her slipping on the wire that they got on Rudy. This apparently does not go very well because the last time Terri saw Rudy, she was actually firing him for hitting on her while he was supposed to be working in the yard with her older son. She actually called the cops when he showed up at her house, and the police considered the sting an absolute failure. Kane, however, is pretty much confused as fuck because the cops are trying to tell him that his wife Terri was trying to hire their landscaper to murder him, and he's all, what the fuck are you guys talking about? We don't even have a landscaper, you idiots. Up until his exact moment, Kane and Terri were in complete solidarity about someone outside the family being involved in Kyron's apparent vanishing. Now Kane is forced to reconsider, I guess. On the night of the failed sting operation with Rudy, it was documented that 2 telephone calls to the police were made later that same night. At 5:27 p.m., there was a threat call from the house and an officer was dispatched. And then later, at 11:39 p.m., they marked the call as a custody issue, and I'm not sure if a second officer was dispatched or not. But the tea is, though, that at some point in the night, Kane had apparently packed his shit and baby Kara's shit and dipped out, leaving Terri alone and what I would imagine pretty fucking confused. I have a feeling that when Kane came home from the police department, he asked Terri about the secret landscaper she hired, and when she admitted she had done that behind his back, he was probably forced to reconsider the baby's and his safety, since the hitman claims could also be true. Terri explains that she never told Kane about hiring Rudolfo, who owns a local family landscaping business, that she only hired him out to help their older son James with this chore of the yard work because she felt it was a little bit too much work for the teenager, and apparently didn't want to fight about it. On June 28th, just 24 days after Kyron went missing, Kane heads down to court and immediately obtains an emergency restraining order against Terri, and he files for divorce. Terri is then only allowed supervised visitations with her daughter effective immediately, and the documents have been sealed, so she's not even sure what the claims that Kane is making against her are. She can basically speculate that this is because the police are focusing on her as a suspect, though they have not officially named her as a suspect yet, or like ever, if we're being honest. Terri actually secured a rather famed defense attorney, and his name is Stephen Howes. He's known to be very expensive to retain, and it strikes Kane rather oddly that Terri can all of a sudden afford such a very expensive attorney, and he demands to know where her money is being sourced, considering she's just a part-time substitute teacher that hadn't been working for months at the time. And wherever she's getting the money for this attorney surely must be how she can afford to pay someone to kill him. He even attempted to make the judge reveal her financial sources, which turned out to just be her parents, also school teachers, who took out multiple mortgages to afford this guy. They adamantly believed their daughter was not involved in Kyron's disappearance, and they were also uber upset about it. After the media gets a hold of the information that Kane had filed for divorce from Terri, the alleged murder for hire accusations would spread like wildfire. The public almost immediately turns on the stepmom Terri. Any doubts about her that people had before this moment had just increased exponentially by this point, because reporters are even camping outside the home that she apparently found herself alone in when the media asked Kane if he ever expected Terri capable to be hurting him or their children. He said never previously had he ever felt that way, but he concluded that with the recent allegations that have been made, he can't be 100% positive anymore. He's basically just acting on the risk posed to their baby Kiara. So this is when a woman named Dee Dee Spicer entered the picture. She is seen visiting Terri at her home in the period in which the media is camped outside. Dee Dee claims to have met Terri back in 2005, so that would have been like 5 years prior to that time. And they both met at the gym they go to. And even though they're not exactly best friends, Dee Dee's there to show her support for her friend, who she believed wasn't capable of being involved in Kyron's disappearance. She was reported to have then moved into Terri's home shortly thereafter, and at least for 11 days. Now that Terri has a new bestie, obviously, police start to look into her and find that Dee Dee's alibi for the day of Kyron's disappearance allows a bit more room for possibilities in the search of Kyron. Dee Dee claims that she was volunteering at a garden nursery not too far away from the home of Terri, and of course, they go check that shit out. It's been rumored that Dee Dee and Terri were actually secret lovers, but to be honest, I could care less if that was the case or not. Neither one of their exes has ever made claims to that, and they would probably know better than the rest of us web sleuths. The owner of the property that Dee Dee was supposedly volunteering at can confirm that she was there working on the day of the disappearance, but it does so happen that they were unable to locate her around the time that they were supposed to stop and break for lunch. They said they attempted to call her on her cell phone, but that she never answered, and she explains that her cell phone was in her truck. She was in the very far end of the property, and it's 38-acre property, and she just lost track of time, ending up missing out on the lunch break that they're referring to. She says she never left the property that day, and the owners cannot confirm that, obviously. Since the nursery area is so big, it's very possible she was on it, but not seen the entire time, considering how woodsy the area is. So this next part is a fucking bombshell, you guys. And get ready, because if you're not familiar with this story, this part is going to probably mindfuck you, or at least it did the rest of us. So a man named Michael Cook comes into the picture after Kyron went missing, and he's said to be a former high school friend of Kane's, actually, and he was there helping in the search efforts. I read in some places that this Michael Cook guy even helped organize Kyron's first vigil, actually. But after Kane had moved out of the home with Kiara and he filed for divorce, Michael and Terri apparently started texting each other soon after. And it's pretty cringy, you guys, but the messages actually have been released to the public, and I can't think of any good reason as to why, besides simply to turn the public more onto these two people. But it's very evident in the text messages that Terri was pretty thirsty at the time. Their messages had become very graphic at some point, and Terri even sent a few nudes to this dude. And she was apparently unaware that the investigators were watching her phone activity and could actually see everything she was saying and receiving. Now, if you read these messages themselves, Terri was practically throwing herself at this dude, and it seemed to me like he was flattered, but not like super interested, honestly. She was the more graphic of the two, and after reading the messages, I'm sure he did hit it, maybe even a couple times. But of course, like the gentleman he is, he tells reporters that they've never had relations. He's only ever been to her house to console her. And we're all sitting here like, yeah, consoling her with your wiener, Michael. You can decide for yourself if you want to read like the cringiest exchange of thirst messages I might have ever read. I'll legit link them in the description sources for you. Obviously, the public would expect her to be more worried about finding Kyron than finding some dick, so she's further dragged through the mud, and I can't argue much on this one. It's terribly odd behavior, and I think I might have a reason for it, actually. Kane, her ex-husband, has referenced that back in 2005, before their baby Kiara was born, Terri had a bit of a drinking problem, as well as a obsession with bodybuilding. She managed to get fourth in a contest, actually, for women over 35 at the time, but she also earned herself a DUI in the months just after. He said that she was drinking behind his back, and he didn't even know until the DUI happened. So with that information, I'm willing to bet that maybe when Kane took the baby and moved out, and she's alone at home getting blamed for the disappearance of her stepson and divorced over murder allegations, she starts drinking again. I mean, wouldn't you? Even if she's guilty in Kyron's disappearance, I still think she would drink because it's probably super fucking stressful either way, to be honest. So she's drinking alone, and from reading the text messages, she is super fucking horny, obviously. And it seems like the behavior of an alcoholic to me. And that's why it doesn't make much sense when you look at her as a mom, but it makes a lot more sense when you think of her as a stressed out alcoholic mom, or at least to me. Even Desiree, Kyron's real mom, made the public statements to reporters that Terri's actions, as of lately, have made her feel tremendously guilty that she wasn't able to protect her son from someone that she thought she could trust. It's very apparent Terri's behavior has turned everyone against her, and obviously anyone associated with her is pretty disgusted with what they have been seeing and learning on the media for the last few weeks. It's been like one negative thing reported after the other for Terri. So while searches are still being conducted in more specific areas of town due to the amount of tips that they've been given, Kane decides that Terri shouldn't be living in their home, sexting dudes all day. She should be moving out, and him and Kiara can continue living in the family home. And a judge agrees, and this forces Terri and Dee to move out. So a few days after this, the judge demanded that Terri stay at least 500 feet away from Kane's home, his work, or the gym after Kane had attempted to have Terri held in contempt of court for violating the original restraining order that he had requested. He claims that Terri, in the days after she moved out, had come into the gym that they both use and attempted to take baby Kiara from the daycare facility. However, Kiara wasn't there. The gym staff actually told Kane that Terri herself admitted that it was a shame Kiara wasn't there because if she had been, she was going to take her, which obviously is a very scary thing when you think this wife tried to have you murdered and might have something to do with your missing son. But I kind of think it's possible she was just talking shit and might have just been drunk. Not saying that she wouldn't have taken Kiara had she been there, but Terri continued to elaborate on why she was asking. Makes me think that she might not have had the presence of mind to consider how she's acting or sounding. But after Terri is outed for the sexting, and in an attempt to continue secretly communicating with her friends, Dee apparently went out and purchased some burner phones using some fake names and some cash. I believe that she bought 3 phones, one for Terri, one for Dee, and one for some unnamed friend of Terri's. Detectives also flashed those burner phones when they became aware of them, and I'm not 100% positive if Dee bought all 3 or this unnamed woman did. Even if it was Terri who purchased them, I'm not terribly concerned about who bought these phones, but rather why they bought these phones. What were they saying that shouldn't have been seen by the police is what I'm curious of. Apparently, this unnamed friend had obtained a lawyer fairly soon after the burner phone incident, and I read that she was fully cleared in any possible connection to Kyron's disappearance, and that could very well be why she's always referred to as the unnamed friend in articles. I believe it was to protect her identity, considering Terri was at the time said to be receiving death threats over the public's suspicion of her involvement. By the end of July 2010, the $25,000 tip reward for finding Kyron had increased to $50,000, and by November 29th of 2010, the investigation into the disappearance of him had cost the state of Oregon $1.4 million in resources, and they received over a total of 4,200 tips from all across the nation. One of those tips included something that then made the police circulate some questionnaire to the locals in the area that if they had ever seen a second person or someone sitting in the white truck that Terri was supposed to have driven to school that day. They even took a picture of a similar truck in front of the school to show people what it would have looked like. Desiree tells reporters that after reading some of the emails detectives have uncovered for her, she now believes that Terri had clearly a hatred for Kyron, and because of that, through tears, she says she now feels Terri really could be capable of harming Kyron, and even maybe to a fatal degree. She claims this on the Today Show, referencing these emails, saying there's hundreds of them pertaining to how Terri felt Kyron was a burden and the root of a lot of the trouble between her and Kane's marriage at the time. These emails weren't made public, but I was able to see a couple snippets of them in certain places, and from what I have seen of them, it wasn't anything like, oh my fucking god, I wish I would have taken Kyron and thrown him off a cliff or something. It was more like, oh my god, Kane doesn't appreciate the fact that I stopped everything to help him raise Kyron and I never get enough credit. She even made the point that she was the one to teach him sign language as a baby and noticed that he might need glasses. And guess what? It turns out his vision was pretty bad. Kane eventually did take Kyron to the doctor. They said his vision was like a 70/50 rather than like a 20/20. So after Desiree read all those scary emails, apparently, she decided to file a civil lawsuit against Terri in 2012, and it was in the amount of $10 million plus the location of the remains of Kyron. Desiree was later encouraged to drop the civil lawsuit against Terri in the best interests of the investigation for Kyron, because her civil suit would actually interfere with the process of convicting Terri if she was in fact responsible for Kyron's disappearance. In the meantime, though, a few of Terri's friends would be subpoenaed to court to the connection with the case, and that included Dee Dee Spicer. Dee Dee was subpoenaed for court and proceeded to sit there and pled her Fifth Amendment to 142 questions in a row. She wasn't spilling so much as one fucking bean, because apparently when she stupidly implicated herself into the investigation by associating with the stepmom Terri, her alibi was also implicating her into a different crime, which was unemployment fraud. She had told police she was working on a property near Terri's location on that day of the disappearance as a volunteer, and when the cops went to verify her alibi with the owners on the property, they mentioned she was gone over an hour and was in fact being paid for her work. Very generously, actually. So the tea is that Dee Dee was also receiving unemployment benefits at the same time, and the amount that she had gained from exploiting that system was enough for some serious charges. But the courts actually granted this bitch immunity from the crimes so that she would truthfully testify against Terri if the time ever came. And she was also said to have passed the polygraph, and every property that she was known to stay at has been searched, as well as the property she was said to be working on that day of Kyron's disappearance. Alright guys, this is going to be a good place to cut the episode. Shit's hella long, and I decided to make it into 2 parts, though I am going to release both parts at the same time. So it's totally up to you guys to either continue listening or to see how much self-discipline you have and save it for next week so the season break isn't as long. It's up to y'all. Thanks for listening, you guys. Don't forget to share if you're enjoying, and don't forget that part 2 is available now if you want to listen to it. So that's what I got for you. I hope you enjoyed my rendition of this story, and if so, please tell all your creepy friends about it. You can find the sources I used for the episode in its description. You can follow my Instagram account at True Crime Queen for some laughs if you need a little pick-me-up after all that dark shit. Feel free to leave an honest review on iTunes, or maybe even consider clicking the link in the description to make a small donation to my equipment fund so I can keep making you guys some killer-ass content. See what I did there? I know. Alright, bye!